All right, it is Thursday. G'day, mate. Here we are for week 5 of Saving Thursday, presented by BetVictor. Staring at the Pacific Ocean in Australia. My name is Ryan Pinder, grinding in his prettiest of floral shirts. Tyson Cole in Vancouver will be joined by Gilles Gallant of the Action Network later this morning from the East Coast, and producer Jack in studio in Calgary. Fellas, we got this on lockdown. We got global coverage of the Thursday nighter today. It is the Bucs and the Falcons, Tyson, as we get our 4th consecutive divisional matchup on Thursday night.
For sure. And I think we got a great one here. I mean, the Bucs have looked good all year, and so have the Falcons in spurts. You know, they've played really close games thus far. And I mean, I feel like they've been doing really well with Kirk O'Chain. So I'm excited for tonight.
I love it. Okay, we've got anytime touchdown bets we're going to talk about. We got 3 props we're going to hammer. 2 you absolutely adore, which always gets me excited. Some weeks you're like, I don't know, I think maybe this. And other weeks like, oh, baby,
yeah,
lock it in right now. And then when you bet on those, then you can then travel to Australia. I think that's a
well, you got to pay
figure that out
somehow, right?
That's right. Also, we'll take a look at how these offenses run. And there's some intriguing matchups in terms of positions against these defenses. And of course, a glance around the league and what's coming up on Sunday and Monday. Let's react to last week, though, friends. It is a legitimately unforeseen instance of, which is the Minnesota Vikings looking like the best team in football. Tyson, how did we get here? They were supposed to be really tough out of the gate, but then it gets easier in the schedule.
I know. I don't understand these teams that they're beating, the Texans, the Niners, the Packers. They're all supposed to be really good teams this year. And you would, before the season, you would schedule those as losses for the Vikings, but they beat all of them. I don't know how they're doing it. It's hats off to Kevin O'Connell and most importantly, Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, where you been? What you been doing? How are you like a top 5 MVP candidate? I was looking BetVictor, futures, MVP. Like what?
I don't get it. He's researched, man. He's got this team, like everybody loves him. Like he's feeding everybody. Addison came back last week. He had 2 touchdowns. They got him in on the ground. Aaron Jones beat the crap out of his former team. Made them totally regret that decision. And I mean, Jetta's the big thing about him. He's kind of had the Julio Jones effect where he was never able to score touchdowns, but he's got a touchdown in every game. I'm so excited to watch this Vikings team, man.
Getting it done both on offense and on defense for the Vikings. I looked, they're top 5 in points for, top 5 points against in terms of defense being good. Love that. And, oh, by the way, TJ Hawkinson should be back soon. I believe he was he's what, a 6-week issue? Because he started, mid-season, I should say. It was a bad knee injury last year. He left at tight end number 1 in fantasy at the time of his injury last year. So this offense should get better, Tyson.
As if they needed another weapon. I mean, when Addison was out, they had Jalen Naylor, who was pretty much a nobody. He was scoring touchdowns left and right. And now you're getting TJ Hawkinson, one of the best tight ends in the entire league. I mean, sky's the limit for this team, man.
So if the Vikings are surprising, Davante Adams not wanting to be in Vegas is blank. Not surprising is my answer.
Yeah, not surprising at all. I mean, you kind of saw that written on the wall. Like his body language has never been like fully there. He wasn't ecstatic when they moved off from Derek Carr last year. I mean, the reason he went to the Raiders was to play with his old college teammate. And then now they move on from him in that same season. Like it's been pretty rough. And now you're hearing like Antonio Pierce is liking some tweets or Instagram photos that like, oh yeah, Davante Adams wants to get traded or whatever. It's like, why are you doing that as a coach? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And he's coming out and saying, oh yeah, players are making business decisions rather than playing hard for the team. Obviously that's a shot at Davante Adams. And now he's out with a hamstring injury.
I'm with you. And look, I think if Antonio Pierce is doing that, it's already to a point where they're done with him there. I don't think Antonio is, I guess, that hot-headed or just, I'm going to like this. Like, I think there's always purpose behind these things. And when he said business decisions, when you've seen, we got to watch that wide receiver series on Netflix over the summer, and Davante Adams in Vegas was a little prickly. He was not ever afraid to talk about it, the big picture, his legacy in the game, less team, more Davante, and that's fine. But they're not good. And the reason he went there ain't there anymore, to your point. It was to play with his old college quarterback Carr. And he's still thought of as a top receiver in the game. But again, they're not good. They haven't been able to get him the ball. They don't have good quarterback play necessarily, whether it's Minshew or Connell that'll be there the bulk of the remainder of the season. It makes sense. I mean, they should be moving away from Davante Adams. And if liking an Instagram post helps facilitate that, sure, let's do it. Yeah. But what's intriguing is, okay, now that we're at the point where we think it's going to happen, and he probably won't play again for the Raiders, given the hamstring and the stakes involved if you're now trying to trade him, there's a lot of places he'd look real damn good, wouldn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, top two on the list have to be his two former quarterbacks. Like, obviously, Aaron Rodgers and Davante had a fantastic connection. I feel like he would be a perfect fit on the Jets, especially because Garrett Wilson was hyped up to be this number one wide receiver. We haven't really seen it. Granted, he's played some really difficult matchups thus far, Patrick Surtain, L'Jarius Sneed, and others. But I mean, that would just be a match made in heaven, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I do. I mean, look, when we think about Davante Adams in his career, the whole highlight reel, 99% of it is Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. Like, let's be honest here. He was, considered a bust at one point early in his career, but he and Rodgers turned into the top duo in terms of quarterback to wide receiver in the sport for a while there. Mm-hmm. Now, are they both exactly what they were 5, 6, 7 years ago? No. How much of Rodgers is still left there? I don't know. How much is Davante is still left there? I'm not sure, but I certainly think they'd be on the same page. And that's where, when we've watched Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, there seems to be I thought you were going in. Well, no, I was going out. And it's like, you're not going to worry about that with Rodgers and Davante, who clearly had a strong understanding of where each other wanted, a play to go or where the ball should be. Mm-hmm. And just to go further down the list, Ian Rappaport, I believe, who was the one who broke the Davante might prefer to play elsewhere. He's been quoted by someone on Twitter here. I don't want to, get too crazy down there. This person said that the game of telephone, but Steelers have inquired. Of course, they have producer Jack. Quick thought there. You were hot and heavy for Brandon Ayuk, only for him to stand up the golden black. Would you love Davante Adams to go with your Pickens?
Yes, I would. The Steelers aren't getting any production out of any other wide receiver than George Pickens. Yeah. So they desperately need another wide receiver. Like you said, they were right there with Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if they got played or what ended up happening there. It seems like it was pretty close. So they'll be right in there for Adams as well. They need another playmaker opposite of Pickens.
Well, and so let's keep moving down this list then. The Ravens, I'm sure they would love to have them. I don't know the cap situation there, but to me, it's just like you only throw the ball 15 times a game. What is this really where you want to go? I mean, yes, you'd be better with them. I don't know that that's a spot that Davante is going to be frothing at the mouth to get to. But, Mark Andrews has turned into a non-entity in that offense. Isaiah Likely, after the week 1 breakout, hasn't been him. Bateman, not really. So if you put him with Zay Flowers, I do like that offense a little bit more. Quick thought on Baltimore in here, who have really doubled down on the run game since adding Derrick Henry, Tyson.
Well, that's just it. Like, if you're this, it's not a pass offense. Like, they've always been a run heavy offense, and they especially used that last week and killed the Bills. So I think if you're going to go out and get anything, it should be another offensive lineman, because like you said, Mark Andrews has been pretty much nothing. But to that fact, like, if you add, he's had to block. So if you add another offensive lineman, then that means Mark Andrews can now go back and focus more on the receiving aspect of his game. And then that's pretty much just an in-house, not Davante Adams type, but, another high-end receiving option for Lamar Jackson.
Bills make some sense. They're alpha of last year. Stephon Diggs is now in Houston. In fact, we'll talk about it. The rematch there, or revenge game there this weekend. I could see him fitting in, but there are a lot of parts already there when you think about Shakir and Coleman, Kincaid, the tight end. I don't worry about Buffalo's ability to throw the ball with Josh Allen, but they've kind of tried to rededicate themselves to the ground game a bit this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe a fit in Buffalo. The Cowboys, I think of when they had, Lamb and Cooper out there at the same time, and then Cooks as a third. It's like, oh yeah, that offense hummed. They haven't quite had any of those big Dallas offensive outbreak games yet that we came to become accustomed to over the past few years. I could see a fit there. And the Niners, I wonder. I mean, you've got Ayuk healthy. Debo just came back. They're great when he's healthy. When one of those guys gets hurt, I'd like him there. But maybe that's only a matter of time. But right now, I don't know that he isn't the third best option if he goes to San Fran.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like something you do on Madden franchise mode when you trade for Davante Adams. Like that just seems unnecessary. They're just going all in. I would hate to see him in the Niners because it would not only kill like his fantasy outlook and player prop outlook, but it would kill everybody's. There's too many mouths to feed. I mean, I do like the Bills as a potential target. Khalil Shakir's looked great, but he's not really that alpha wide receiver. He's good in the slot. But, I mean, does Buffalo really want to go through like another Devo wide receiver? They just got rid of Diggs, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. I think my favorite would obviously be the Jets, Steelers for producer Jack, or the Bills.
Yeah, I like the Jets Saints tie lines. We didn't talk about storylines, I should say. We didn't talk about the Saints in terms of the fit there. We talked about Derek Carr being there. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense to you to have Olave, Adams, and then Rashid Shaheed stretching the field as a third guy? Like, do those parts fit?
I mean, I think it would fit, but it's just the least exciting to me. I mean, you know, like the Saints, they were great the first 2 weeks. They won the first 2 weeks Super Bowl. Congrats to them. But I mean, they've fallen off. They lost the last two. They lost to the Falcons last week. It was a close game, but I don't know. Like, what would you do? I mean, you have Adams in the slot. You put Olave in the slot. Like, I don't really know how that would fit. And I mean, we just saw how good he was with Rodgers over Carr, so I would prefer Rodgers. But I mean, that connection, if they still have it from college, I mean, it's not terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing: it was Carr lost his job with Adams there, right? Last year with O'Connell. Yeah. I understand there was a coaching change, all that stuff, but bad year for the Raiders. Another one probably this year, but it didn't, to your point, look nearly as effective as Rodgers to Adams. It's fascinating, fellas, and I don't know, like, he's not young anymore, but it's also like if you got him some good quarterback play and you got him into a playbook, this could be one of those pieces where you're like, that changed that team's offense. And I think, Jack, like for you, the Steelers, man, as much as I bug you about that team, they've got the defense, but they are so uncomplicated on offense. Pickens, the only guy they throw to. Freiermuth can help out a little, but they're going to run the ball. Like, this really would open a playbook up for Pittsburgh, Jack.
Yeah, it would a ton. It would open up a lot more for George Pickens, who hasn't got in the end zone yet this season. Freiermuth over the middle. Yeah, they desperately need another playmaker. Whether it's just the decision now: do you use these assets like a second round and a third, fourth round pick this year, and you're really going all in at that point? Do you trust Justin Fields? You got two quarterbacks who have very low cap hits. Adams has a pretty big cap hit. I think it's like $35 million or something.
Yeah.
If you're doing it now, then you better think you can go to the Super Bowl and win it.
Hey, you're welcome for that low cap hit on Russ. No problem.
The Broncos guy over there. We'll get to you. Settle down. Interestingly, I believe this is the last year of guaranteed money for Davante Adams. Yeah. He is making too much. That would complicate things because all of a sudden, if the player's got any sort of leverage over trade, no trade, that sort of thing, it's like, well, I want to talk about new deal. And also, the Raiders might have to eat a little bit of cash here to fit him into a contending club based on Davante Adams not looking like a Pro Bowler since he's arrived in Vegas versus, that's what he got paid for on his contract. So those are another couple of wrinkles to keep in mind, but never boring for the Raiders. Are they back sort of to square one, Tyson? I know, like Aiden O'Connell ain't it, I don't think, or he'd be playing over Gardner Minshew, like until they get a quarterback, or are they just in rebuild here?
I mean, you got to assume so. I mean, their defense is pretty decent with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins. So, like, they're going to win. They're not going to be as bad as the worst team in the league. But you got to imagine that. Like, what is your plan? Like, if you bring in Gardner Minshew, which has been kind of a career backup, he has looked good in spurts. Like, he looked great last year for Indy, but he's not the answer. And he's never going to be the answer. He's just a suitable backup. And if you're going to not play Aiden O'Connell, who's supposed to be your future, what are you doing right now? Like, if you don't have it. Yeah, if you don't have a quarterback, I'm in the belief that you got to find the next one, like right away. Because how many teams have won the Super Bowl without like a good quarterback?
Yeah, it's small list, right?
Yeah.
Trent Dilfer, and the list doesn't go much longer than that. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's get some other notes. Rashee Rice. Oh, man. The injuries have hit hard this year. If you're playing fantasy football, if you're just a fan of some of these contenders, there's been some massive deletions we've talked about through the first month. And now week 5, Rice will not be there for Kansas City. He got hurt early, too. If you had a prop or you're playing him in fantasy, that's tough. You get the goose egg injury early. Didn't look good. He actually got hurt by Patrick Mahomes, of all people.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, you don't see that often either. Now, they haven't ruled him out for the year yet, which is a little surprising. Tyson, there's some hope he might not be done for the year?
Yeah, I mean, initially when the injury happened, like it looked bad. He wasn't getting up. He got carted off. He was lying down, had a towel over his head. Usually players know, and they'll put the towel over their head because they're crying. They don't want like anybody to see that. That's usually an indication of, torn ACL or a serious injury, which this could be, but they still don't know. Like there's some hope now. There's optimism that he's not going to be out for the entire year, which would be great because he was phenomenal. Maybe one of the best receivers outside of Malik Neighbors all season. But they got him on IR now, so he'll be out at least 4 weeks. And I think they said they're going to wait till next week for his knee to stop swelling. Before they do their initial tests and actually diagnose him with something. So we'll find out next week, but not looking good.
Yeah, and it's an offense where Travis Kelce, we talked about Mark Andrews. I mean, it's not quite as bad, but his role in the offense has diminished significantly. They already lost Hollywood Brown. We talked about it week 1. They were there for first Saving Thursday ever presented by Bet Victor. It was them and the Ravens on opening night. And we're like, man, this Kansas City offense is back. Last year was the outlier. Let's get ready. This is going to be video game stuff. No, it hasn't been. And Rice was really their most dependable weapon. They've lost Pacheco, which is horrible. He was looking like a really important piece. Now KC's 4-0, boys, but it's not been pretty.
No. I mean, they did this last year with a much worse core, like receiver core. They went on and won the Super Bowl. So, I mean, you can never really count them out, but I mean, it's not going to be as fun as we initially thought. You got Rashee Rice over the middle, Travis Kelce, still one of the best tight ends, Isaiah Pacheco, the Xavier Worthy, the speedster down the middle. I mean, I wanted Devontae Adams to go to KC because I think that would be break the league almost, but I can't really see the Raiders trading in division.
And financially, they're in the toughest spot as well, which is why you see them, picking up the pieces they are in the offense. Like they're not chasing big. Exactly. It's Juju Smith-Schuster might be the first look, and it's a little scary because Xavier Worthy's been great, but he hasn't touched the ball a ton. I mean, 2 touches week 1, both go to the house, and you're like, it's a star, and it's like, well, I mean, there's some star tools there, but he doesn't touch the ball a ton.
No, I mean, but we saw what happens when he got that one bomb targeted last week. I mean, he caught it. So if they can kind of utilize him, how they use Tyreek Hill down the field and then kind of pick up the pieces with Juju and Justin Watson kind of in the middle. And I mean, Kelce had a good game as soon as Rashee Rice went down. I think he went 7 receptions for 89 yards or somewhere around there.
Good sign.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Rashee Rice was just in the way of Travis Kelce this whole time.
Okay, let's do a quick temperature check. We've got Tyson, the Broncos fan, Jack, the Steelers fan. I am a Chargers guy, just around the room because, we're here to make some money and make some bets, but we also got our teams we love to watch. Tyson, it is the hottest team in the NFL if you only look at the last 8 quarters, maybe. I don't know. How are you selling this thing?
Well,
Broncos
I mean,
have actually been good.
I know. The defense is phenomenal. I handed out the 2-week Super Bowl to New Orleans Saints. I will hand the week 3 and 4 Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos. Very good. Very well.
Jeez.
We beat the Jets. I mean, it was terrible weather game. And I'm just surprised they didn't really rely on Breece Hall a lot. We didn't have like an outstanding run defense or anything, but like our Patrick Surtain is just a lockdown corner. He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Whoever
they
goes
just paid him, right?
Yeah. Fine. I was worried he was going to leave. Yeah. But I mean, I was blowing at the TV when Greg the Leg was taking that game-winning field goal, and it worked. So I mean, I'm a lot to credit for that.
I don't know if Jack has that depth chart, but chief blowing at the TV guy. That's your position on the team. We'll have to add that on the website.
Sounds good. It's one above Waterboy. I got a promotion, so
good. That's nice. Good to see. And Jack, on the flip side, 3-0 start for the Steelers. I kind of am waiting to see them beat a team I think is good. I don't know that they played one yet, and then they lose to Indy, who I don't think is necessarily good. Although I'd like to know who was a quarterback before talking about Indy. That had to have stung our Steelers fan producer Jack.
Yeah, like a week ago on this very program, I was talking about how elite this defense is. They've been giving up 8.7 points per game through the first 3 weeks or something, and then they proceed to get lit up by Joe Flacco. They could not get off the field at all. It was horrible to watch. I don't know what was going on. Even like the first drive of the game with Richardson, they just went down and they made it look so easy, and you could just tell it was going to be one of those kind of days. Then, of course, Flacco comes in. So I was feeling pretty down. I saw some other teams lose, though. Like the Bills got stomped. I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe, they were due for one of these games. And then on the bright side, I thought Fields responded really well in the second half. They made it a game. They had the last possession of the game to go down and win. A botched snap kind of screwed everything, but he keeps progressing. I do think that they need another playmaker, but I don't feel as bad about it as today as I did initially after that one.
Yeah, that's fair. We're not going to see Russell Wilson under center unless Fields gets hurt. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Unless he gets hurt or, they play a game and they've done nothing at half and maybe Tomlin makes the switch, but I don't think so.
And I'll give you the Chargers take, fellas. I was not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid in terms of they're back. They're competitive after 2 wins over the Raiders and Panthers. Those 2 teams might be picking in first and second overall to draft this coming spring. And yeah, look, they kind of hung with KC better than I thought they would. Herbert's been dinged up. They missed both their tackles last week or were playing through injury there. I like that they have better, smarter people at coaching and at general manager, but I'm definitely not on the 10 wins second in the no. Like, it's still year one of fixing a lot of bad decisions there. They'll be back. I don't know that this is the year, friends.
Hey, I mean, you'll always have that 10-0 lead against the Chiefs, so that's pretty good.
And the Steelers, I think they had a lead too. But either way,
turn the TV off if you ever have a 10-point lead.
Let's get to our game tonight. It is in 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 on the Pacific Coast. Tampa at Atlanta. Tampa's 3-1. They've kind of been sneaky good since Tom Brady left. I don't know that people thought that was going to be the case. And yeah, well, that was last year. Well, no, it's happening again this year. And Baker Mayfield does look like a legit quarterback. Atlanta's 2-2. It's a bit of a mixed bag. You beat the Eagles. I think that's good. You beat New Orleans. I really would have liked that if I heard that after week 2. But then, they lost to Pittsburgh. I don't know. I kind of don't know what Atlanta is. And I think when you look at it, I think the Bucs have won the division 3 of the last 4 years. They've won 6 of the last 8 against Atlanta. They're favored by 1.5 points. They're getting 1.5 points here on the road, which is to suggest they'd be a favorite on neutral site. I think I know more about what the Bucs are than what we know about what Atlanta is, Tyson. They've got all these interesting parts. They've changed coordinator, quarterback, and head coach. And yet it still kind of looks like the old Atlanta where it's like, how are you doing more with all these dynamic pieces?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you kind of nailed it right there. I mean, it's all Baker and his resurgence, which is so nice to watch. But the offensive line, like, it got so much worse. But I mean, Bucky Irving's producing, and he's kind of came out of nowhere. He's been that, because Rachaad White has been one of the most inefficient runners, but they're still able to pick up the pieces with Bucky Irving. So, I mean, Mike Evans is Mr. Consistent. Chris Godwin's having a fantastic year. And I honestly thought last year, like, the Bucs had a terrible pass defense, but this year it's actually not terrible. They're kind of bottom half of the league, if I remember correctly. So, I mean,
middle third.
Yeah, around there.
Where are you at in Atlanta? I mean, if you've been a Kyle Pitts fantasy owner, you've had your heart broken. If you've been leaning on Drake London, you're starting to get the touchdowns, but I don't know that, he's necessarily one of those, superstar wideouts at this point. Kirk Cousins hasn't looked like the guy that was so money in Minnesota, and now you're seeing Sam Darnold doing things there. You're like, oh, maybe it was the system and the coaching. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to come back from an ACL tear, but I mean, this team just lacks an identity. I really like their defense, but I mean, it's not great. Like, they've got a lot of names, but are they really playing that sound defensively? I don't really know. And I mean, like your point, like Kyle Pitts, he's a bust. I'm ready to call it. Like he got a goose egg last week. The week before, he had one catch for 50 yards. Like, he's just been non-existent. He's not the guy that we saw in his rookie year. Like, he's not explosive. He does not create separation. I believe he had he ranked dead last in causing separation last week, which has probably led to his 0 catches.
Right.
And this team, like, what they should be doing, if you're going to draft a running back in the top 10 or in the first round, let alone the top 10, you got to utilize them. And we haven't really seen that big Bijan game. Granted, he did have a good game. He had just shy of 125 yards against the Eagles, and they won that game. So why are you going to go away from that?
I'm with you. You don't draft running backs in the first round almost ever. Their life expectancy is too short. But when you have one that merits that, you absolutely ride them into the ground. And they haven't really done that with Bijan. You know, we saw Cordarrelle Patterson eating into his workload last year, if I'm correct. Tyler Algiers, and you got this stud. Like, why aren't you putting the ball in his hands 40 times a week?
I mean, you kind of have to, and you have a good insurance policy behind him. Like, Tyler Algier, before they drafted Bijan, had a fantastic rookie year. So, like, hey, obviously you don't root for injuries, but hey, like, we can rely on Bijan a lot because we have that dependency as his backup.
Drake London, where are you at?
He's just like, I never get the hype. Like, come fantasy season, he's always like second, third round. And I'm like, why? What has he ever done? And I mean, I kind of understood it this year because now you got Kirk O, and like, he's always produced like a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy at least. And I mean, we're not seeing that. Darnell Mooney is leading the team in receiving yards right now. Like, who would have
probably
thought that coming?
All you need to know about Drake London, right? I mean, some house calls, but
that, and he shoots t-shirt guns into the stands.
Does he? Okay. I missed that. Send me that.
No, the touchdown celebration, what his coach said.
Jack, walk us through injuries here. What are we looking at for the first game of week 5, this divisional battle between the Bucs and the Falcons?
Yeah, so on the Atlanta side, right tackle Caleb McGarry will be back. He's their starting right tackle. The Bucs had 6 sacks on Jalen Hurts last week, so this will be good. Get the run game going, pass protection. He's back. Troy Anderson, middle linebacker for Atlanta, is out. And then on the Bucs side, Trey Palmer's out, Jalen McGillen out again. So I think we'll see a little bit more of Sterling Shepard. He didn't play the first 2 weeks. Week 3, 7% of snaps. Last week, 65% of snaps. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that go up even more here today. And that's
McMillan was the guy that was getting some targets, and now he's gone. So Shepard's an interesting angle. We'll get to our prop picks of the game here in moments. Before we get there, fellas, our boy Gilles Gallant out on the East Coast. He's a good boy, you know. He's got our anytime touchdown bets, part of the touchdown show on the Action Network. Let's check in with Gilles to see where he sees the house calls coming from for tonight's opener of week 5.
Here are my 2 touchdown scorer picks for Bucs Falcons, brought to you by the Action Network app. And my first pick, I went with Drake London. I grabbed his touchdown odds at plus 175. Now, I still think the touchdown market hasn't come around on him. Now, he didn't score last week because none of the Falcons scored an offensive touchdown, but he has a touchdown in 2 of 4 games, 6 red zone targets. That's more than the rest of the Falcons players combined. Now, this Bucs secondary has been a bit lucky lately with their receiver matchups this season. The Eagles are missing their top 2 wide receivers. Bo Nix can barely complete a pass, and Jaden Daniels wasn't Jaden Daniels yet. So I expect Kirk Cousins to test this Bucs secondary with London getting another touchdown. And my next pick, we're going to go with Cade Otton for a touchdown. I grabbed his odds at plus 400. Now, he's got 17 targets over the last 2 games. He's playing over 90% of snaps. He's seen at least 1 red zone target in each of the last 3 games. And the Falcons defense, they play a lot of zone. The top 6 rate in the NFL. and they don't really give up a ton of big receptions. Only 4 completions of 20 yards or more. That's the fewest amount in the NFL. I still do expect Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to get theirs, but with Trey Palmer out and Jalen McMillan, Otten should see a usage bump as a result. So those are my 2 bets. We're going with Cade Otten and Drake London. Both bets tracked at the Action Network app. Bon chance.
Indeed. Jack, how's your French? You know what that means?
No idea.
Good luck in life and bon chance. I actually really like both these. We talked about what London isn't, which is that feed them all night, high volume receiver, has been getting it done in terms of getting looks in the red zone. I love that stat, more than double the combined rest of the Atlanta offense for red zone looks. Love that angle. And he made a good point about the Bucs secondary. We've been giving them their flowers, but they've been running into teams missing some of their top wideouts or not really at full stride. Cade Otten's been coming on. He's got not the huge volume, but steady volume in that Tampa offense. It's a much bigger number at plus 400. I'm gonna tail Gilles, our boy here, plus 175 for London and plus 400 for Cade Otten, the tight end. Yeah. And man, he was close last, 2 weeks ago. We had the Tyler Conklin anytime. He was all over the field.
Yeah.
Game.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Gilles knows what's up.
Yeah, I like both. Like Drake London, yes, like you alluded to, he's not, the reliable guy like all the time, but in the red zone, he's their biggest wide receiver. So why not just throw like a little lob pass and see if he can win that 1-on-1 battle? And I mean, Cade Otten, on the other hand, he got 13 catches the last 2 weeks. 7 2 weeks ago, 6 last week. So, I mean, he's getting the volume now. So hopefully it can be consistent.
Let's take a look at Tyson, your handy cheat sheet. How did these defenses perform against position groups? This is how we really start to get cooking in the lab for some of our prop bets. Again, if we're saying first or second and things are green, that is good for the offense, not good for the defense. So, for example, you see the Atlanta Falcons have allowed 41 yards to quarterbacks in rushing. That is first, aka the most in the NFL. So if you like Baker to get out of the pocket, there you go. Conversely, one column to the left of that, it's the Bucs defense have allowed 40 yards of rushing. That's second most in the NFL. Again, that is a green light go for the offensive positions playing that defense. Those are that. What else are you seeing here? Those are when you see first and second in a category that jumps out. The other one in there, running back receiving yards. You can throw to your running back and gain some yardage against the Bucs here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just blown away by both these teams allowing the first and second most for quarterback rushing yards. I thought that was a little funny, so I had to include that. We might see a little Kirko and Baker, rushing yards tonight. But I do like, running backs. I love targeting running backs pretty much. They're my favorite kind of angle to go at. And I mean, if you have an elite, pass catching back like Bijan against the Bucs defense here, really good matchup. I mean, that can just be, if you're not going to run, he can be an extension of the run game. Just dump it off real quick, and there you go. So, those are 2 of the targets I definitely like. We got another one in the top 5 here. Wide receivers reception line against the Falcons. They allow 14 per game. And I mean, they do have a really good defense, but they're allowing a lot of receptions, especially in a certain area, which I'll get to later.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into some of those. When we look at quarterback rushing yards against, it matters who you're playing against. Of
course.
There are some stoic pocket statues and there are mobile guys. I will say this. Tampa Bay has played Daniels and Hurts, and Atlanta has played Hurts as well as Justin Fields. Those 3 names I mentioned, Hurts, Fields, and Daniels, probably top 5 rushing quarterbacks in the game. If you made a list today, that's going to skew numbers through 4 weeks when half of your quarterback reps are from super mobile outliers of running the ball from the quarterback position.
Absolutely. So it's important to take that into context. I'm not a about to go out here and be like, oh, they allow 40 yards per game. Okay, I'm going to take Kirk Cousins to go for 30 yards, who's coming off an ACL injury. That's just not a smart way of betting. Don't just take that for what it is. Like context matters. But maybe I'll look on the other side because Baker has been kind of running a little bit.
Okay.
And his line is pretty low. It's 10.5 on BetVictor right now. He's cleared 2 out of 4 games this week. He averages 16 per game. He missed last week, but only by 1 yard. We got the hook last week, which isn't great. Atlanta, like we just saw, allowed the most rushing yards to quarterbacks. And since he's running a lot, yes, they've had those easy or hard matchups against running quarterbacks. So I just kind of trust Baker a little bit more, especially with his run game. And I mean, Atlanta's the biggest problem on their defense was they never really had a pass rush. And now this year they got Matt Judon on the side. So that only should, and this Bucs offensive line, like we alluded to way at the beginning of the show, has gotten worse. It has held up, but against Matt Judon, I don't necessarily, expect them to contain him all night, which will force Baker to, slip out of the pocket and hopefully get this over 10.5 rush yards.
I like it. It's a fun one. Just don't let what happened to Tua Tagovailoa when we bet the over on his rushing yards happen to Baker. I don't want to make a joke about it, but it's like, oh God, like get the yards. Oh my goodness, is his career over? And
just
we don't
slide.
have the answer yet.
Just
slide, Baker,
Yeah.
Slide. Don't make us feel guilty for hammering a quarterback rushing yards prop.
Absolutely.
So Baker over 10.5 rushing yards, minus 120 is the number on BetVictor. And I don't mind that one. Now, we talked about when maybe you can't run the ball as much as you like to, you can use your running back in the passing game as an extension of the run game. We saw the numbers. This could be a monster Bijan Robinson game. Although, to be fair, for a season and a month, we've been saying this could be the Bijan Robinson breakout game since he was drafted. We've been saying that. What are you cooking up with Bijan?
Well, now we're getting into my 2 favorites on the day. I love Bijan over 26 receiving yards, minus 120 on BetVictor. He's cleared in only 2 out of 4 games, so half his games, but he averages 33.8. So his average is more than this line itself. His most recent game against Tampa, he had 54 receiving yards. And dating back to last season, I just want to double check. The Falcons are at home, correct? Because last week I screwed that up.
The Falcons are at home. You nailed it.
They're at home. Perfect. All right. So in 11 home games, he's cleared in 8 of them, and he averages 35 yards per game. So he even gets that uptick just at home. And like we just saw, the Bucs allow the second most receiving yards to running backs. And let's kind of break it down. So week 1, they allowed Eckler to go over this line. He had 52, but they also allowed the backup, Brian Robinson, to go for 49. Week 2, Montgomery had 35. Gibbs had 7 receptions, but only had 22 yards. But 7 receptions is still a lot. And then Javonte, week 3, had 4 for 29. And Saquon last week went 2 for 32. So they all went. There's multiple instances where both running backs went over, but definitely the main receiving back, like Bijan is, he went over. So love that play. Love it for Bijan. And hopefully this can be his breakout game this season.
Yeah, I just remember the watching his tape a couple of years before he was drafted. You're like, holy, this guy is going to be, a superstar. And it might still come. Again, it's new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, but I still believe that there's a star in there. They just got to feed him a little more. And if your O-line isn't perfect, we saw it last year with Breece Hall. Just throw him the ball instead of asking him to run between the tackles. Get Bijan going. Put the ball in your star's hands. I'm with you on Bijan Robinson. Over 26 receiving yards, minus 120 on BetVictor. And then that brings us to our next and final prop bet for tonight's contest. We're going to target receptions. This is a big number here you're going at with Chris Godwin on receptions against this Atlanta D.
Yeah, I mean, I like it at 5.5 if you can get it there. BetVictor has it at 6, which is perfect because you do buy that, hook or whatever. So if it does land on 6, you get your money back. So it's not the end of the world. But he's had 6 or more receptions in all 4 games this season. averaging 6.8 per game. The other, he had 8 and 7. Against Tampa Bay, loves catching the ball against Tampa. He's cleared 4 out of his last 5.
Against Atlanta. Yep.
Yeah. Again, sorry. Did I say Tampa? My bad.
You're good.
He averages 7.6 per game. So still crushes them. And like we just saw, they allow they're tied for 5th most in receptions to wide receivers, averaging 14 per game. Falcons they run the 3rd most zone coverage in the entire NFL, 89%. And Godwin ranks number 1 on his team against zone coverage, according to PFF, catching 13 of 14 of his targets, but not only against his team, but against all wide receivers in the entire league. He ranks 5th with the 5th highest PFF grade against zone coverage. So just completely dominates on the whole league aspect. D. Alford is the slot wide receiver or slot cornerback for the Falcons, and he's not very good. He's played 89% of his snaps in the slot, so he's always in the slot. So let's just look at the last 3 weeks, all right? Against Philly, he was targeted 7 times, and the receiver caught it 6 times. Week 3, against Kansas City, 9 targets, 9 catches. Against New Orleans, week 4, targeted 9 times, 6 catches. So that 6 number is that sweet spot, and I mean, to go over, he might not be lined up against D. Alford this time, but I mean, I really like it. And obviously, if you watch Chris Godwin's game, you know he's the slot receiver. He's more than doubled the next Buccaneers player in slot snaps. So definitely love Chris Godwin. That's probably my favorite play.
I hope this D. Alford guy could cook or writes poetry or something. Tyson's just absolutely ending his career on
Sorry, bud.
But we'll take it. We'll target him for the prop bet. I like your 3 bets. That's the final one. Godwin, 6 receptions. We're going to take the over. Pays minus 111. Let's throw them all up one more time. Our 3 props of the week. Bijan Robinson, over 26 yards receiving. Chris Godwin, over 6 receptions. Baker Mayfield, over 10.5 yards rushing. All available at BetVictor. And again, odds can change, especially when Tyson starts talking about stuff. We're moving markets. Well, maybe not yet, but one day we'll be moving markets.
We'll get there.
Tyson. Not yet. And to bring you up to speed, here's how it's gone this week. Week 1, 2 for 3. Week 2, 2 for 3. Week 3, don't want to talk about it. Week 4, 2 for 3.
When are we going to sweep? It's got to come. We're knocking on the door every week.
A good bounce back last week. If you missed it, Wan'Dale Robinson doubled what we called over on. That was a healthy bet. And CeeDee Lamb, he destroyed that receiving total. Yep. Devin Singletary let us down. To be fair, the Giants as a whole kind of let us down a bit in the run game. Yeah. But I mean, 2 for 3, we'll take it. Pays bills.
Yeah, that Cowboys run D was last year's Cowboys run D.
Yeah,
like it was crazy to watch. Yeah, they couldn't get anything on the ground. So, I mean, we'll take it. But we got to do savings Sunday. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I would say I'm 4-0 on saving Sundays.
Okay, so I know the last week you had the what was it, Stephon Diggs in the slot because Houston over.
Yeah,
and he went over. By the way, you've only picked overs as well. You just totally
Life's too short to bet the under, man.
You would have loved the under on Rushy Rice last week. I'll tell you that. Okay, so then let's get to it. What are you eyeing this weekend? You got one for the weekend that is a little teaser.
Yeah, everybody's gonna hate it. Yeah, I'm taking the only 0-4 team in the entire league to get their first win of the season. Jacksonville Jaguars over the Indianapolis Colts. The line doesn't make any sense to me. Why are the Jags so poor? Like, why are they favorites? They're 0-4. I mean, it's looking like Anthony Richardson's going to play. And I mean, I actually think that might be worse for them because Flacco was cooking against a good defense last week.
Yes, he was.
It's definitely a little risky. It's not going to be a fan favorite, but I mean, Travis Etienne has crushed the Colts last season. Finished with the RB6 and RB3 against them. So if they get to a lead and just let Etienne cook, I mean, we could see Jacksonville get their first win of the year.
I looked at that line and thought the same thing. Why is this? Like Indy just beat Pittsburgh, a 3-0 team, and now they're they're dogs on the road against a team that doesn't have a win. Like, And then I think about the quarterback position. I'm like, I have totally different emotions if I know Joe Flacco's going to start this game versus, well, maybe he'll be in at some point because Anthony Richardson starts games, he doesn't finish many. Maybe that's cooked into this line here because that spread was a little befuddling. I would love to see a full Joe Flacco and bet the Colts, but I don't think that's going to be on the table for us necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of up to the quarterback. I obviously like it a lot more if Richardson is in because he hasn't looked as stoned as, Joe Flacco, which is surprising because Richardson was a top 4 pick.
Yeah.
And I mean, Flacco was sitting on the couch this time last year. So, but sometimes you just got to look at the line and you just got to let Vegas tell you something.
They tried to tell us last week with Baltimore, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, what? They're a 1-win team against undefeated Buffalo. What? Oh, I'll take Buffalo on the points.
And it was a go up. Yeah.
Not even close. They know what they're doing. No question. Other games to keep an eye on this weekend. Jets and Vikings are in London. We'll see if the Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers reunion storyline goes away or not. Vikings are undefeated. That's an intriguing one. They've already beat a New York team. They opened their season with a win over the Giants. It is Stephon Diggs against Buffalo, revenge spot for Houston. This could be a great game, fellas. These two teams, when they're right offensively, can shoot the lights out. Should be fun. And Jacko, I'm going in division. I'm another one I'm looking forward to. Baltimore at Cincinnati. If the Bengals go to 0-4, it's over, man. Like, you do not come back from 0-5, excuse me.
They got to win.
They won last week. They beat the Panthers.
Thank you. So they were 0-3. They beat the Panthers, the awful Panthers.
1-4.
But Baltimore now, it's like they were a team that was 1-2. They were a team that had a rough start, and I just find that an intriguing matchup. And if you're a Steelers fan, I know you'll be watching that one because Baltimore looked dangerous against Buffalo last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this game because it's a big win that Baltimore just had last week. And now I think, are they on the road, I believe?
Yeah, in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so now you got to come into Cincinnati. And I mean, sure, you beat the Panthers. Like, very good. Here's the statement game for the Bengals. So, and I believe they'd be both 2-3, right? With a Bengals win. So it's just a huge game. And producer Jack, you're probably hoping for a Bengals win. So
he sure is.
Just get one.
I don't know, because I think if the Ravens win this game, I really feel like the Bengals are almost just drawing dead at 1-4. It's going to be really tough to come back from that. Like, if the Steelers, I want them to win the division and get a home playoff game, but I think playoff odds wise, I'd rather just see the Ravens win this. Let's get the Bengals. Let's put them down in the dumpster and forget about them with the Browns.
Yeah.
Fellas, been a fun one. Appreciate it. I'll be back in studio next week. We have a gem of a game next Thursday, an NFC West rivalry as the surprising Seahawks, who were fun to watch against Detroit earlier this week, will get the Niners, who haven't been quite right and still don't have Christian McCaffrey back. That is next week on Saving Thursday. We thank you for joining us. Thanks to our pals at Bet Victor for setting us up on the program. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next week.